I woke up to the sound of a heart monitor beeping and the faint smell of hospital coffee. My throat burned, my chest felt like it had been stapled together, and for a moment I thought I was still dreaming. But then I saw it, my wristband, dated April 3rd through April 9th, a week, gone in a blur of anesthesia and machines. When my nurse, Bria, came in to check my IV, she smiled and said, "Your family's party looked beautiful." I blinked. "Party?" I could barely get the word out through the dryness in my throat. She nodded, still gentle. "The Mercer estate night. They said it was a celebration of your legacy. I saw it on the local feed. Legacy. That word hit harder than the surgery. I reached for my phone, still plugged into the charger by my bed. Notifications. Dozens of them. Messages, photos, tags. And right there, one video thumbnail stopped my heart all over again. My 3 children standing under string lights in my backyard, champagne glasses raised. A banner behind them read, "Mercer Legacy Night, April 6th. I was still under sedation that night, tubes down my throat, lungs fighting for breath, and they were celebrating my estate. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from. I tapped play. Evan, my oldest, was giving a toast. "To Dad," he said, voice smooth and confident like always. "He built this family, this house, this future. Tonight we honor that by making sure it doesn't go to waste." Laughter followed. Mara, my middle child, the influencer, clinked her glass with a grin. "Cheers to the Mercer legacy," she said, camera lights glinting in her eyes. Josh, the youngest, barely 28, was in the background, showing strangers around my home like it was an open house. I could hear snippets of conversations between the music. "Garage tools go to Josh. The boat lift? Sell it. Master bedroom set auction." Someone had written "estate slices" on a stack of paper plates. It wasn't a party. It was a preview of my funeral. When Priya came back in, I asked her, "What day is it?" "April 9th, she said softly. "You're doing great, Mr. Mercer." I wasn't, because right then I realized my children didn't even wait for me to die before dividing what was mine. Later that night, while the hospital hummed with quiet machines, I held my wristband up to the light and traced the dates with my thumb. April 3rd to April 9th. In between those numbers, everything had changed. I felt something inside me shift, not anger, not grief, but a cold kind of clarity. I wasn't going to shout or confront them right away. I was going to take my time. I was going to gather proof, because if they wanted to treat my life like an inheritance sale, I'd make sure the receipts told a very different story. They discharged me on April 9th, just before noon. The Florida sun felt too bright, like it was mocking me. My chest ached with every breath, my stitches pulling under the weight of it all. Luis, my marina manager, picked me up in his old Ford truck. He didn't talk much, just helped me into the seat and handed me a thermos of coffee. "Your kids said they'd clean up the house before you got home," he mentioned casually. Clean up. That was one way to put it. When we pulled into my driveway, the first thing I saw was the arch. A floral arch made of wilted white lilies and ribbon, half collapsed over the back deck. Confetti clung to the wet grass like dandruff. There were empty champagne bottles lined along the porch rail, a banner drooping between 2 posts. Mercer Legacy Night, April 6th. I walked inside, leaning on the cane the hospital had given me. The air smelled like candle wax and spilled wine. Balloons sagged against the ceiling, and my dining table, my oak table, was covered with paper plates, some still smeared with frosting. A catering receipt lay near the sink, crumpled and sticky with something pink. I smoothed it open. Gulf Coast Catering, Mercer Estate Night. Date, April 6th. Total, $2,260. Card ending in 4419. Evans card. I felt dizzy, not from the surgery this time, but from disbelief. They'd charged nearly $3,000 to celebrate the estate I hadn't even left yet. In my office, I found a sticky note on my desk. Safe? The safe was still locked, but the brass hook on the wall where my spare key used to hang was empty. The dust outline showed where it had been. My pulse spiked. I shuffled into the living room, where my late wife's portrait still hung above the fireplace. I whispered to her, "They threw a party, Linda, while I was under." My voice cracked. "They toasted our life like it was for sale." The weight of it hit me all at once. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was personal. I'd raised them to look after one another, to respect hard work, to wait their turn. I'd built everything for them. The marina, the brokerage accounts, even the home they stood in that night. And in the 1 week I couldn't stand up for myself, they'd carved me out of my own life. I sat down, pressing my palm against my chest, feeling the bandage throb with my heartbeat. The silence of the house was unbearable. Every glass left on the counter felt like an insult. Every stray napkin, a memory of laughter I hadn't been invited to. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Evan raising his glass, Mara smiling for her camera, Josh leading strangers through my hallway. I replayed it until the anger turned to exhaustion. Around 3 a.m., I walked to the fridge for water and noticed something pinned under a magnet. A florist receipt. April 7th, condolence spray, white lilies. Customer, Mara Mercer. I laughed. Quiet, bitter. Condolences. For a man still alive. The next morning, I called Nora Patel, my attorney. She'd handled my will back in 2018 when Linda passed. "Nora," I said, my voice shaking, "they thought I was already gone." She didn't sound surprised. How grief does strange things to people. But betrayal does too. "You'll need proof before anything else." "I have proof," I said. "Receipts, flowers, a damn catering bill." "Then document everything," she told me. "Don't confront them yet. We'll handle this by the book." After we hung up, I sat by the window, watching the light fade through the palms. I thought about the years I'd spent teaching my kids that doing things the right way mattered. The irony wasn't lost on me, because now the right way was the only weapon I had left, so I started writing everything down. Dates, amounts, every sound I remembered from that video. I wasn't ready to fight yet, but I knew sooner or later I would. And when that day came, they wouldn't be facing their father. They'd be facing the man who kept the receipts. If they turned my life into a market, I told myself, then I'll turn the market into a ledger. On April 12th, I wrote my first check since surgery, $7,500 to rehire my attorney. Nora Patel. She met me in her Sarasota office that same afternoon, the air thick with the scent of legal paper and lemon cleaner. I brought the catering bill, the florist receipt, and screenshots of Mara's social posts. She slid her glasses down her nose, scanning each one carefully. "Your 2018 will still stands," she said. "Equal shares, unless misconduct can be proven." That clause suddenly felt like divine foresight. We drew up a plan. Step 1, inventory every asset. The brokerage account held $3.4 million. The marina sale escrow was $1.2 million. CDs and savings added another $412,900. $5 million total, money I had earned over 4 decades of early mornings. Sunburned shoulders and dock grease under my nails. Nora's pen scratched notes as she spoke. "We'll need surveillance, statements, and timestamps. Everything lawful, clean, and traceable. Let them hang themselves with their own evidence." The next day, April 13th, I called Caleb Hart, a private investigator I'd met years ago during an insurance audit. "Ex-cop, clean record, sharp instincts." "Hell, you sound like a man with a purpose," he said when I explained. "I sound like a man who's done being naive," I replied. Caleb was on my porch the next morning, notebook in hand. I showed him the video clip from April 6th. He rewound the footage, pausing on every frame where my children's smiles looked too rehearsed. "They're not grieving," he muttered. "They're performing." He dug into their digital footprints. By April 14th, he'd pulled screenshots of Mara's Mercer Legacy night reel on Instagram. 41,000 views. The caption, "Closing a chapter with grace." Behind her, my house glittered in the candlelight. Caleb smirked. "People don't realize social media is a confession booth." That evening I asked Priya, the ICU nurse, to meet me for coffee after her shift. We sat outside the hospital cafe as the sun went down. She hesitated before speaking, eyes darting toward the parking lot. "Mr. Mercer, there was a man here on April 7th. she said quietly. He brought papers, something about power of attorney. Tried to get you to sign while you were sedated. My pulse jumped. What did you do? I refused. Told him you weren't coherent. He left angry. She pulled out her small nurse's notebook. I wrote the time down, 4:15 p.m. When I got home that night, I placed her note beside the catering receipt and underlined both dates. April 6th, April 7th, the same window of betrayal. On April 15th, my phone buzzed, notifications from Venmo. Evan paid Josh $300 labeled Boat Lift Consult. Mara sent Josh $120 labeled Master Bedroom Move. I took screenshots of each. Proof that they weren't just scheming, they were transacting. I forwarded everything to Nora. She replied within minutes. Perfect. Don't alert them. We build the file quietly. No confrontation until the filings are ready. For the first time in days, I slept soundly. My anger had purpose now. Channeled, documented, methodical. I spent the weekend cataloging what was mine and what they'd touched. I found my master key ring. 3 brass keys still intact, 1 missing, Josh's unreturned spare. Another entry for the ledger. Every morning I'd wake early, pour black coffee, and write the truth like a bookkeeper of betrayal. Page after page I listed names, dates, receipts, and remarks. Each item was a nail in a coffin they'd built with their own arrogance. By the time April 20th rolled around, I wasn't a victim anymore. I was an accountant of justice, balancing what they'd stolen against what they still owed me. They thought the party had been their victory lap. But it was only my audit beginning. By May 2nd, the shock had worn off. What was left was precision. I wasn't going to scream or make threats or let grief cloud my aim. I'd spent my whole life running a marina, boats, schedules, ledgers. You learn that when the tide turns, you don't panic. You just adjust the ropes. That morning I called a locksmith. Replace every cylinder, I told him. He came at 9 sharp, sweat beading on his temple under the Florida heat. I watched him change each lock, front door, side gate, garage, office. The invoice came to $480, and I paid in cash. 2 keys for me. 1 sealed for Nora, 1 for Luis in case of emergency. That brass click of a new lock. It felt cleaner than forgiveness. At noon, Caleb stopped by with a flash drive. You might want to sit for this, he said. He plugged it into my desktop. The screen filled with ring cam footage. April 6th, between 7:40 and 10 p.m. My house glowed under the string lights. 6 people entered, carrying collapsible bins and tote bags. Evan led them toward my office. Josh lingered near the safe. At 8:19 p.m., you could hear the metal handle jiggle. Then a faint voice, Evans, saying, POA draft's in the car. Nora won't sign off, but we can reword it. I felt my pulse slow, not speed up. The footage wasn't just proof. It was confession, time-stamped and unfiltered. Nora reviewed it that afternoon. She didn't look shocked, only resolute. This isn't just moral misconduct, she said, highlighting Evan's voice in the transcript. It's attempted financial coercion of an incapacitated person. That's grounds for an injunction. By May 5th, she had drafted the paperwork, a motion for injunctive relief and asset protection under probate law. All lawful. All clean? Suncoast Wealth received notice to flag my accounts. No disbursements without notarized consent from me. The escrow office followed the same rule. I made copies of every receipt and put them in a leather folder labeled Mercer Audit. Inside, Gulf Coast Catering Invoice, 2060 Florist Receipt, April 7th, Condolence Spray, Venmo, Screenshots, Ring, Timestamps, Priya's Nurse Note, 4:15 p.m. April 7. Each page was a reminder that revenge, when done right, looks a lot like record-keeping. At home, I installed new security cameras, one over the garage, one by the porch. Luis helped me bolt them in. You sure about this? He asked quietly. I'm done being sure, I told him. I'm being smart. That night I stood in my locked office, the hum of the air conditioner cutting through the silence. I took out my phone and recorded a voice memo. May 5th, 10:47 p.m. All locks changed. Documents secure. Motive confirmed. Next step, exposure. It wasn't anger driving me anymore. It was discipline. I began drafting a personal statement for court. Calm, factual, irrefutable. I wrote it in my ledger's back pages, every line neat and dated. They divided what wasn't yet theirs. They celebrated my absence, while my lungs were still fighting. This case isn't about money. It's about consent, decency, and the line between inheritance and theft. When I finished, I felt lighter. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet. Not haunted, just mine. The next morning, I walked the perimeter, sunlight glinting off the new brass locks. Each turn of the key echoed like punctuation, closing the chapter they thought would end with me. As I stood there, the ocean breeze from the marina carried the faint sound of gulls. I realized that every act of protection, every paper filed, every lock replaced, was more than just revenge. It was recovery, me taking back what should never have been taken. The plan was in motion, and the rope was tightening. They just didn't know yet who was pulling it. The first bank freeze hit harder than any confrontation could have. It was May 6th, a humid Tuesday morning. Nora called at 9:15 sharp. "Suncoast Wealth has locked your brokerage," she said. "Escrow's frozen too. Any attempt to withdraw will trigger a notification to me and the court." I stared at my coffee as it cooled, a slow smile forming. The children hadn't just stolen time from me. They'd underestimated it. By noon, the silence broke. Evan stormed into my driveway, his Audi skidding over the gravel like it owned the place. He didn't knock. He just started shouting through the screen door. "What the hell did you do, Dad?" "I protected what's mine," I said calmly. "What you thought was yours." He pushed open the door halfway, waving a folder in my direction. "This was supposed to be simple. You're making this ugly." I recognized the papers instantly. The POA draft. The same one Priya had told me about. "April 7th, I said quietly. "You remember that day? You were in my hospital room." His eyes twitched. "You were incoherent." "I was alive," I said. "And that's all that matters." He left with a curse, tires screeching. I called Nora immediately. "He confronted me," I said. "That's fine," she replied. "Let him dig deeper. The hearing's been set for June 5th. By then, we'll have everything in order." Caleb came by that evening with 2 new statements, one from the florist confirming Mara's condolence order, and another from the caterer who remembered Evan's card. "They even tipped 15%, Caleb said, shaking his head. "Paid in full, no shame." Meanwhile, Josh started texting me late at night. "Dad, you're taking this too far. Dad, we didn't mean it like that." The messages got shorter as the bank notices began hitting their accounts. Trust inquiries, flagged transactions frozen pending withdrawals. They were feeling the walls close in. By mid-May, Mara's tone changed too. She posted an apology video online, except it wasn't for me. It was for her followers. "Sometimes," she said tearfully, "people misunderstand grief. We only wanted to celebrate Dad's life." The comments section wasn't kind. "You threw a party for inheritance," one wrote. "Gross," said another. The damage was public now. On May 17th, Nora called again. "We have probable misconduct," she said. "I'm filing for injunctive relief and a guardianship review. We'll submit Priya's statement, the ring footage, and all receipts as evidence." I didn't feel triumphant, just steady. "Do it." The next day, Luis came by with a stack of marina invoices. "Found this in the old drawer," he said, handing me a folder. Inside was a bank slip, $1.2 million escrow marina sale, signed by Evan Mercer. The date, April 10th. They'd tried to move the marina escrow just a day after I got home. That was the final spark. I walked to the deck, looking out over the still water, and made myself a promise. I wouldn't raise my voice in court, I wouldn't gloat, and I wouldn't crumble. I'd let the truth do what my words never could. On May 20th, Mara texted again. "We should have a family sit-down before this gets worse. Maybe dinner next week?" I stared at her message for a long time before replying, "Sure, my house." 7 p.m. That was the rehearsal dinner, though none of them knew it. I'd already called Caleb to set up discreet audio capture on the porch, lawful in Florida if one party consents. And I would be that one party. When the night came, I planned to keep the conversation civil, but recorded. Every half-truth, every justification, every nervous laugh. They'd hand me their own confession. The pieces were moving. The court date was set. Their facades were cracking. and as I sat at my desk that night, the faint glow of the marina lights flickering through the blinds, I opened my notebook to a fresh page and wrote, "The first freeze was louder than any apology." Then I closed the book, exhaled slowly, and prepared for dinner. They wanted a dinner. I brought a ledger. May 20th, 7 p.m. Sarasota's heat had softened into that sticky coastal dusk where even the mosquitoes move slow. I'd set the table like nothing had happened. Grilled fish, iced tea, candles burning low. From the outside, it looked like reconciliation. Inside, it was evidence gathering. Mara arrived first, perfume thick, smile thinner. Josh followed, avoiding eye contact. Evan came last, late as always, button down crisp, confidence cracked. I greeted them with the same even tone I'd once used at the marina when the engines failed. Steady, calm, controlled. We ate in strained silence for 10 minutes before Evan leaned back. "Dad, can we talk about all this court nonsense?" "Nonsense?" I repeated. "That's one word for it." I slid a small black notebook across the table. On top, 3 printed sheets. The catering invoice, April 6, 2,160 hours, paid by Evan Mercer. The florist receipt, April 7th, condolence spray, ordered by Mara, and a screenshot, Josh's Venmo note. Boat lift consult, Mara blinked, color draining. Josh looked at his plate. Evan laughed, a hollow sound. "You really printed this out? Dad, you're taking this too far." "Maybe," I said, "but you took it first." The candlelight flickered between us, catching the shine on my new door locks through the open window. "You don't understand," Evan said. "We were trying to plan ahead, prepare in case something happened." "Something did happen," I said softly. "You just didn't wait for it to finish happening." Mara's voice trembled. "We thought—" I cut her off. "You thought I was gone. You toasted my life like it was a brand name," Josh muttered. "I just needed money, Dad." Evan said. Evan shot him a glare. "Don't start." The tension hung thick, and I could hear the faint buzz of the porch light above us, the same porch where Caleb's discreet audio recorder sat hidden behind a potted fern. Every word captured clean and legal. I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't have to. Their excuses filled the space where apologies should have been. When Evan tried to pivot, "You can't take this to court. It'll ruin the family," I simply said. "Then you should have thought of that before you held my funeral." When dinner ended, no one hugged. Mara gathered her purse in silence. Josh muttered something about not meaning it. Evan lingered long enough to say, "You'll regret this, old man." "Maybe," I replied, "but I'll regret nothing that's true." They left without dessert. The door shut behind them, with the solid finality of a bank vault. I walked to the porch, checked the recorder, red light still blinking, and pressed stop. The quiet that followed was almost holy. For the first time, I felt the tide shift. Caleb met me the next morning. We replayed the audio, both of us sitting in the stillness of my office. Their voices came through clear. Evan admitting to planning ahead, Mara confirming the order dates, Josh confessing debt. Caleb shook his head. "That's open and shut. Nora's going to have a field day." Later that afternoon, Nora listened to the tape in her office. She smiled for the first time since this began. "This is all we need, Hal. Between the receipts, the video, and this recording, they can't spin this anymore. It's premeditated exploitation." But that wasn't the only surprise waiting. That evening, Caleb called again. "You're gonna want to hear this," he said. "Found the notary your son tried to hire on April 7th. She refused to stamp the POA, said you were non-responsive." That single line, non-responsive, was the keystone. Proof that they'd tried to take control while I couldn't even sign my name. I hung up and walked outside to the deck, watching the last light fade over the water. I wasn't angry anymore. I was prepared. The dinner had been their stage. The courtroom would be mine. And this time, every spotlight would burn bright enough for the truth to stand on its own. A judge's bench is just a higher kitchen table. That's what I told myself on June 5th, as I walked through the marble lobby of the Sarasota County Courthouse. My heart didn't pound. It counted steady, like the metronome of a man who'd been keeping score for months. Nora met me in the hallway, her briefcase tucked under one arm, calm and precise as ever. "Hal," she said, "we're not here to punish them. We're here to expose them. I know, I said. But sometimes exposure is punishment. We stepped into probate courtroom 3B. The air smelled faintly of paper and nerves. On the right side sat my children, Evan in a navy suit, Mara hiding behind oversized sunglasses, Josh fidgeting with his sleeve. Across from them I sat quietly, hands folded over my cane. When Judge Wainwright entered, the bailiff's call echoed like a drumbeat. I didn't look at my kids. I kept my eyes on the seal above the bench. Case number 24-2127, the clerk read. Mercer vs. Mercer. Motion for injunctive relief and fiduciary review. Nora stood first. Her tone was measured, deliberate. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Harold Mercer, was under sedation at Sarasota Memorial Hospital from April 3rd to April 9th, following cardiac surgery. During that time, his children, she gestured lightly toward them, organized an event they called Mercer Legacy Night, held April 6th at his residence, during which assets were openly divided, sold, or allocated among themselves. Subsequently, an attempt was made on April 7th to obtain an altered power of attorney, while Mr. Mercer was still medically incapacitated. The judge glanced over his glasses. Do you have documentation of this claim? Nora opened her folder with a soft click. We do. Exhibit A, Gulf Coast Catering Invoice 2060, dated April 6th. Exhibit B, Florist Receipt for Condolence Spray, April 7th. Exhibit C, Venmo payments labeled Boat Lift Consult and Master Bedroom Move. Exhibit D, Ring Cam transcript showing attempted safe access. Exhibit E, Nurse Affidavit from Priya Sharma, confirming a male visitor attempted to obtain a signature at 4:15 p.m., April 7th. And finally, Exhibit F, audio transcript from May 20th dinner, statements of acknowledgement and financial motive, recorded lawfully. The judge leaned back. You've been thorough, Ms. Patel. Yes, Your Honor. My client spent a lifetime building a $5 million estate. He almost lost it while fighting for his life. Then came Evan's lawyer, a sharp young man in a too-tight suit, all confidence and deflection. Your Honor, he began, this was a family misunderstanding, not exploitation. The gathering was a celebration, not a division. My clients were managing future responsibilities in good faith. Judge Wainwright raised an eyebrow. And the attempted power of attorney? An unfortunate miscommunication, the lawyer said quickly. They were under emotional strain. Nora didn't interrupt. She simply tapped her pen and waited. Then at the judge's nod, she called the first witness, Priya Sharma. Priya walked up calm in her scrubs, ID badge still clipped to her collar. I remember April 7th clearly, she said. A man came into Mr. Mercer's room with a folder. He said he was family and needed a signature. Mr. Mercer was still under sedation. I refused and documented it at 4:15 p.m. Can you identify that man? Nora asked. Priya pointed to Evan. That one, the courtroom murmured. Evan's jaw tightened, his lawyer whispering frantically. Next, the caterer took the stand. She confirmed the payment. Evan's card, April 6th. The florist did the same for Mara's order. Then Nora played a short clip of the Mercer Legacy Night video, the one Mara had posted before deleting. Laughter filled the courtroom speakers. Garage tools go to Josh. The boat lift. Sell it. When the lights came back up, the silence was deafening. Finally, Nora nodded to me. Mr. Mercer, would you like to make a statement? I rose slowly, leaning on my cane. My voice was steady, not loud. When I had my surgery, I left everything in order, my will, my accounts, my house. I thought I'd raise 3 children who understood the trust isn't inherited. It's earned. But while I was fighting for air, they threw a party to divide what wasn't gone yet. They toasted my name while my heart was still beating. Evan shifted, his lawyer whispering again. I looked directly at my daughter. Mara, you ordered condolence flowers. Did it ever cross your mind I might see that receipt? Her eyes welled up, no answer. And Josh, I said quietly, you didn't just need money, you needed guidance. You came looking for a father in a safe full of cash. I turned back to the judge. I'm not here for vengeance, Your Honor. I'm here to protect the life I built and to draw a boundary they won't cross again. The judge exhaled, long and deliberate. He looked at the exhibits, then at my children. The evidence is clear. This court finds probable misconduct and attempted financial coercion. Effective immediately, all assets remain frozen pending trust restructuring. The defendants are restricted from accessing or transferring any estate property. Costs of legal counsel and investigation, $21,840, will be reimbursed to the plaintiff. The gavel came down like the closing of a vault door. Evan's face went pale. Mara began to cry softly. Josh stared at the floor, whispering, "I'm sorry, Dad." I didn't answer. I just gathered my papers and left. Outside, sunlight flooded the courthouse steps. Nora touched my shoulder. "You did it, Hal." "No," I said, watching the palm fronds sway in the heat. "I just told the truth loud enough for the law to hear it." As we walked toward the parking lot, the ocean breeze carried the faintest echo of applause. Seagulls, courthouse chatter, maybe something else. It didn't matter. The tide had turned. They'd tried to bury me while I was unconscious. Now they'd have to live knowing I'd buried the lies instead. When the gavel came down that morning, it didn't just hit wood, it hit blood. Because by the time I walked out of that courthouse, the family name we'd spent decades building was split open for everyone to see. The first ripple came 2 days later. Mara's brand deals began quietly pulling out. Her lifestyle legacy sponsors vanished one by one. I saw her post a shaky Instagram story, eyes red, voice trembling. "Please respect our privacy during this family matter." Her followers didn't buy it. The comments read like a mirror of karma. "You toasted your dad's death before he died. Grace doesn't come with a catering bill." By the end of the week, she'd gone dark online. Evan's downfall was quieter but sharper. His brokerage partner, Glenn, called me personally. "Hal, I had no idea about the POA stunt," he said. "We're suspending his license pending review. Clients don't want to be represented by someone under court sanction." "Understandable," I told him. "He's always been better at selling than understanding value." Josh was the only one who reached out directly. Late one night, my phone buzzed with his name. "Dad," his message read, "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go that far. I just needed help." I stared at the text for a long time before replying, "Help doesn't look like theft, son. You still have time to learn the difference." Nora, meanwhile, was relentless. On June 12th, she called me to confirm Judge Wainwright approved the conditional trust revisions. "Everything's now locked under your control. No distributions for 5 years, mandatory financial counseling for all heirs, and a misconduct clause. Any future violation forfeits inheritance entirely." I exhaled. "That's fair. It's justice," she said simply. Part of the ruling included reimbursement, $18,640 in legal fees, $3,200 for PI work. I never wanted their money. I wanted acknowledgement. But seeing that check clear in my account felt like a small, lawful victory. I decided to make one final change that same week. I went to Suncoast Bank and set aside $250,000 for the Sarasota Memorial Cardiac Foundation, the same ward that had kept me alive. When I signed the form, the clerk smiled. "That's quite a donation." I smiled back. "Consider it a thank you note for the week I almost didn't get." Back at home, Luis from the marina helped me repaint the porch railings. The floral arch was gone now, replaced by clean white wood and the quiet sound of seabirds. "You're at peace now?" he asked. "Peaceful enough," I said. "Justice makes good company." That night I sat on the deck and opened my ledger one last time. Each page told the same story, from betrayal to boundary. I didn't need revenge anymore. I'd already converted it into balance. A soft breeze carried the smell of salt water and citrus blossoms. The house was still, safe, and mine. I poured myself a glass of water, looked out toward the marina lights flickering across the bay, and thought of my wife, Linda. I could almost hear her voice saying, "You did it the right way, Hal, the quiet way," and she'd be right. I hadn't screamed, hadn't broken, hadn't retaliated in kind. I'd simply used the truth and the law to set things straight. Some nights I still wake up thinking I hear that hospital monitor beeping. But then I realize those were the sounds of survival, Not endings. I took my pen and wrote one last line at the bottom of the ledger. Revenge done clean doesn't destroy, it restores. Then I closed the book, locked it in the safe, and stepped outside. The air was warm, the tide low, the future finally quiet. Justice rarely looks cinematic. It doesn't march in with fireworks or applause. It arrives quietly, like a tide that's been crawling in all night while everyone else was sleeping. By the time June 15th rolled around, that tide had fully turned. My accounts were secure, the trust sealed, and my children's access revoked until they could prove, not just claim, responsibility. That morning, I drove to the marina for the first time in months. The air smelled of diesel, salt, and morning coffee from the bait shop across the dock. Luis waved from the slip, holding a manila folder. "Final escrow cleared," he said. Inside, a single document showed $1.2 million transferred to Mercer Conditional Trust beneficiary, Harold Mercer, primary trustee. I nodded, signing at the bottom. Balance restored. The sun glared off the water, turning it white and gold. I watched a pair of pelicans skim the surface, patient and steady. That was me now. No longer the man on an operating table, no longer the father begging for decency. Just steady. When I got home, I sat at my desk and began writing letters. One to each of them, not out of hate but out of finality. To Evan, leadership without consent is theft. You mistook control for care. Until you understand the difference, your wealth will always own you. To Mara, an audience isn't a conscience. You chased attention like it could heal you. But legacy isn't something you perform. It's something you protect. To Josh, debt is loud, but integrity is louder. You can't buy peace. You earn it one honest act at a time. I sealed each letter and gave them to Nora to hold in the trust archive. Deliver them only when they ask why, I told her. She smiled faintly. That's poetic, Hal. No, I said. It's overdue accounting. Later that evening, I walked down to the dock and stood at the edge, letting the water lap against the wood. The reflection of the sunset wavered across the bay, painting the sky in oranges and fading blues. Luis joined me, handing me a cold soda. "You gonna forgive them?" he asked. I thought about it. "Forgiveness isn't free," I said finally. "They'll have to earn it, same as they'd earn a paycheck." He nodded, eyes on the horizon. "Still, you kept your head when most would have lost it." "I didn't keep my head," I said. "I just used it." The next day, Nora called again, this time with closure. "The judge approved your charitable donation clause," she said. "The hospital foundation sent a letter. They're naming one of the recovery suites after you." I laughed softly. The irony of that. My kids tried to take everything from me, and I end up giving part of it away. That night, I wrote one more note to myself in the ledger. Justice isn't punishment, it's proportion. Because the truth was, I didn't ruin them. They did that themselves. All I did was make sure the world saw what was real. I locked the ledger, checked the windows, and walked to the porch. The bay breeze felt cleaner now, like a wound finally healing. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled across the gulf, soft, not threatening. I raised my glass of water to the night air and whispered, "To balance, to boundaries." And for the first time since that cursed April, I slept through the night without waking to the sound of monitors or ghosts of laughter. The law had done its part. The rest was on time and truth. I learned to live with a smaller table. The house was quieter now. No echoes of footsteps, no distant chatter, no illusion of a family dinner waiting to happen. But quiet isn't the same as lonely. It's just what peace sounds like when you've earned it. By late June, my routine had reshaped itself into something honest. Every morning I brewed my coffee, fed the gulls on the dock, and read the local paper. My name appeared once in a small business column. Local marina founder establishes conditional trust after family dispute. No scandal, no gossip, just a story of a man who lived through it and stayed standing. The neighbors, bless them, didn't pry. Mrs. Dunn next door brought me lemon pie and said softly, "Glad to see you up and about, Hal. Heard the kids got some sense knocked into them." I smiled. "Let's hope it stays that way." On my desk, framed behind glass, hung the ICU wristband, April 3rd to April 9th, the week I survived twice. Under it, I'd taped one of Priya's notes, refused signature, 4:15 p.m. I look at that sometimes, not to stay angry, but to remember the boundary between life and ownership, the thin line they crossed, and I had to redraw. Once a month, Nora scheduled trust meetings. My children attended by video, under supervision. The first one was awkward, full of formal greetings and long silences. Evan looked older, grey creeping into his temples. Mara didn't turn her camera on. Josh sat in a bare apartment, eyes downcast. I kept it professional. This is how accountability works, I told them. You wanted to manage my estate, now you learn to manage yourselves. They nodded. No arguments this time. That evening, a letter arrived from the Sarasota Memorial Cardiac Foundation. The envelope bore my name in neat cursive. Mr. Mercer, thank you for your generous gift. In recognition of your contribution, Recovery Suite 4B will be renamed the Harold and Linda Mercer Suite. Inside, there was a photo, nurses standing beneath the plaque, and among them, smiling softly, was Priya. I felt something in my chest, not the ache of surgery, but a warmth that settled deeper than anger ever had. I'd taken what nearly destroyed me and turned it into something that would keep others alive. That night, I made myself a modest dinner, pan-seared grouper and vegetables, and ate it on the deck. One place setting, one glass, one steady breath. The wind rustled through the palms, and the house no longer felt like a monument to betrayal. It felt like a home reclaimed. I don't replay the video anymore, the one from that night. I don't need to. The images are etched deep enough in me to never fade. But they don't sting now. They remind me of a truth I learned the hardest way possible. Blood doesn't always make family. Character does. Before bed, I opened the ledger one last time. On the final page, I wrote, "Some legacies aren't about what we leave behind. They're about what we refuse to surrender." Then I locked it in the safe, shut the light, and let the night settle in. Justice had been served. Boundaries rebuilt. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't just surviving. I was living on my own terms. They say time heals, but I think time just sorts. It takes the noise, the anger, the heartbreak, and files it into neat drawers labeled lesson, loss, and let go. A year later, that's what my life looked like. Organized peace. It was April again, 1 year since the surgery. 1 year since the so-called Mercer Legacy Night. Sarasota's spring air was softer than I remembered, full of jasmine and sea salt. I stood on the same deck where they once toasted my death and watched the sunrise stretch across the bay. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt lighter, like it had been emptied of ghosts and filled with air. The first message came from Mara, a text at 8:13 a.m. "Dad, I started therapy. Sent you something?" The photo followed a minute later, a dog-eared workbook, pages marked in highlighter. At the top, she'd written in her slanted handwriting, "Accountability means keeping promises you broke." No caption, no excuses, just that. And somehow that said enough. 2 days later, Josh sent proof of his first paid-off debt, a screenshot from the bank app showing a zero balance. "Working double shifts," he texted. "Feels good to sleep without calls from collectors." I replied, "Proud of you, son." "Keep it up. No lecture, no sermon. Just a bridge, not rebuilt but under construction." And then, surprisingly, came Evan. He didn't text. He showed up. I heard the knock mid-afternoon, looked through the window, and there he was, clean-shaven, suit off, humility on. "Didn't think you'd open the door," he said. "I replaced the locks," I answered. "Not the welcome mat." We sat on the deck, silence between us at first. Finally, he said, "The firm suspended me for 6 months. I started consulting on compliance cases, teaching brokers how not to cross the line." I nodded slowly. "You found a purpose in the punishment." He smiled faintly. "Guess I learned ethics the expensive way." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver key, the spare he'd kept. He set it on the table. "This belongs to you." I looked at it for a long moment before taking it. "It did," I said softly. "Now it belongs to what you learned." When he left, I didn't feel triumph. I felt release. They'd each face their own reckoning, not because I demanded it, but because truth eventually outlives guilt. That evening, I decided to host a dinner, just me and a few friends from the marina. Luis brought shrimp, Mrs. Dunn brought pie, and we ate under the same string lights that once hung over Betrayal. This time, no toast, no speeches, just laughter, clinking plates, and calm conversation. Halfway through, I caught myself smiling for no reason. Maybe because this, quiet, honest company was the real legacy I'd been protecting all along. When the night wound down, I sat alone for a while, staring at the flickering candles. The wind rustled through the palms, and for the first time in a long while, I felt gratitude, not for what I'd gained, but for what I'd lost, because sometimes losing the wrong people is the only way to keep yourself. I leaned back in my chair, listening to the hum of cicadas and distant waves, and whispered into the dark, "You didn't lose me. You gave me away." I just finally took myself back. The irony hit me like a soft tide. The party that split my life ended up saving it. They taught me what legacy truly means. Not money, not property, not a last name carved into granite, but peace built by your own hands. And in that quiet Florida night, surrounded by nothing but honesty and ocean air, I realized the truth about revenge. It was never about winning. It was about ending what needed to end,